the lie of the century, and we're going to tell you all about it. 10 states are boycotting the Great American State Fair. What a world. And new 6G AI glasses that are going to freak you out and raise some really weird questions. Welcome to the Jay Sheldon Show. I'm that guy. Hello, good morning, happy Monday. Oh, it is Monday, isn't it? Oh my God. Monday, no wonder the morning started out like that. Unbelievable. Hope you're along for the ride and having a good time on a morning that is kind of blah, but we're getting through it. All right, we got a lot going on. We're going to talk about all that and more coming up this morning on the show. We are live on YouTube and Rumble, of course. And we hope that you will follow or subscribe. It's free, costs you nothing. So we appreciate the support. Thank you very much. Goes a long way. All right. The lie of the century. The evidence supporting natural spillover has always been very, very thin, as opposed to the evidence which points to a lab leak, which has always been very compelling. China acted pretty much like you would expect a paranoid communist country trying to cover up a lab leak would act. No surprise there. Supporting the lab leak theory was, oh, you can't do that because you're siding with President Trump. So that wasn't going to fly. Nothing. Not science, not honesty, morality, credibility, public health. Nothing was more important. He didn't want to be seen siding with Trump. And for years after the outbreak of COVID-19, the pandemic in Wuhan, China, what do we know? Even sitting here today, in the end of June in 2026, how much more do we know about the origin of SARS-CoV-2 virus? Presented at the outset with two rather competing theories, a natural origins spillover from humans, animals to humans, the stupid wet market idiocy, and a accidental lab leak. At the outset, all kinds of elite scientists passionately argued that, the evidence is overwhelming. It favored some natural origin. It had to be. We're the scientists. And they completely dismissed the idea that it leaked from a lab. Conspiracy theory. Bullshit. It doesn't work. It's not the science. Well, with very few notable exceptions, the mainstream media outlets, larger scientific community, vehemently nodded in agreement. Oh, yeah, this is what it is. The lapdogs. NPR said the lab leak theory was debunked. Vanity Fair called it a right-wing coronavirus conspiracy, and Facebook banned any posts suggesting the virus might have been manufactured in a lab. The idiots at Facebook who censor everybody and anything they don't agree with on the lefty platform, which is why I am no longer connected to Facebook in any way, shape, or form. I'm gone. Don't miss you. 4 years later, that narrative began to crack, and rightly so. It's always been a lie. One of the most consequential lies of the 21st century. That's not hyperbole. Like all great lies, it perfectly inverted the truth. The evidence supporting natural spillover has always been barely existed. And it was easy to see through that it was a lie. On the other hand, the evidence that pointed to a lab leak has always been incredibly compelling and grown substantially more pervasive with the passing of time. Coalition of elite scientists and complicit media outlets all did a great job in being very effective in suppressing the truth. In recent months, congressional investigations have intensified. Honest scientists and journalists begun challenging the false consensus. New revelations tipping the scales towards the lab leak even further. At this point, it's just a gimme. Those scientists originally and those media lapdogs were wrong. They were lying to you. Two of the more popular arguments advanced by spillover partisans. The pandemic began at the Wuhan wet market in Wuhan, China. It jumped to humans from raccoon dogs and pangolins. That theory has been completely blown out of the water. Academic papers supporting both arguments, hollowed out by fatal challenges to the underlying data, the methods, the conclusion. It was all garbage. To date, the natural spillover explanation for the COVID-19 pandemic, little more than a rhetorical possibility. Nobody, except for the extreme of the extreme morons on this planet, believe anything close to that theory. If the COVID-19 pandemic wasn't the product of a lab leak, you might reasonably expect the Chinese government to provide some degree of cooperation with the international community. If for no other reason, just to clear its name, if they care. China, of course, did exactly the opposite. It very swiftly arrested doctors and whistleblowers, because that's what China do, ordered labs to transfer or destroy any related viral samples, and not to publish any information related to the unknown disease. That's a quote from them. Shirking the obligations of international health regulations, completely ignoring anything that was above boards and legal. But there you go with the CCP. World Health Organization asked to do an audit of the wet market and the Wuhan Institute of Virology. China refused. They also refused to turn over any vital pieces of evidence like blood samples of the lab workers or the animals at the wet market. Simply flat out said, no, we're not giving it to you. You don't get that. The list of huge waving red flags got even bigger with the discovery and the examination of the diffuse proposal submitted by the Pentagon 2018 and a group of organizations led by Peter Daszak and the Eco Health Alliance. You've heard those names before, I'm sure. Even more consequential peculiarities, shall we call it, present at the furin cleavage site, FCS, which was the unfortunate property of enhancing a virus's transmissibility. How easy it is to go from me to you. Particularly puzzling because zero of the over 1,500 known subbacoviruses, the subgenus of SARS-CoV-2, has ever been found in nature. On the other hand, it is not uncommon for virologists to insert an FCS while doing gain of function experiments in a lab. You making the connection? This is a crime at this point, an absolute crime. Where's that other clip? There it is. Senator Ashley Moody has done a brilliant job of exposing Dr. Mengele Fauci for all of his lies. I got a clip coming up here in a second. The pandemic, completely fake. The tests, fake. Mask science, fake. Social distancing, fake. Vaccine science, fake. News, fake. It was all fake.
And then you had Dr. Fauci, who came out and contradicted himself constantly. At one point, he even admitted later, he told people shouldn't be walking around with masks on. And later he said that was because we were trying to control the supply for healthcare professionals. It wasn't based on any science. But then later he told everyone to wear masks repeatedly. The 6-foot rule seemed to have been just crafted out of thin air with no basis in science whatsoever. In fact, he said that rule sort of just appeared when he testified, and that guidance on the shutdown of schools and small businesses was arbitrary and not based on any science. So I just want to make sure the American people hear that. You had a government who's supposed to be limited and stay out of people's lives, coming in and offering guidance. Many times it was done under mandates to close businesses, people's livelihoods, to keep children from being educated, to keep people from expressing their faith and gathering to show freedom of religion and their faith and expression. I mean, unbelievable what happened during the COVID years.
You got that right, lady. Unbelievable. Senator Ashley Moody, who is a Republican from Florida. It was all fake, folks. If you don't know that by now, you've been living under a rock. Time to lift up the rock and enjoy the sunshine and enjoy the truth. We got taken. 1,000% we got taken. Never, ever, that's why we say never again. Never, ever again. Not going to happen. Fool me once. I don't want to pull a George Bush here. Shame on me. Fool me twice. Shame on you. That's actually the way it goes. Okay. And speaking of lies, we got a thing on this morning show about lies. The Democrat and the media lie about pro-life laws. And they aren't just false. Folks, these lies are deadly. Absolutely deadly, and it is scary. They need you to believe that a miscarriage, an ectopic pregnancy, stillbirth, all belongs in the same conversation as elective abortions of healthy babies and healthy moms. Their entire agenda depends on it. A miscarriage, an ectopic pregnancy, a stillbirth. Same thing as someone who has a healthy baby growing inside of her and she just decides to kill it. They call that the same thing. Kat Kamek, who is a representative and who is also very lucky to be alive, and that is no thanks to abortion activists and their blatant lies about miscarriages and ectopic pregnancies. She was 36 years old when she first became pregnant in 2024, and her joy turned into absolute confusion and sorrow when she was diagnosed with a cornual ectopic pregnancy that ruptured, causing her to hemorrhage. And she recently recounted that horrific incident on an episode of the Tara Palmieri Show. The interview focus, according to Kamek, was supposed to be about sexual misconduct on Capitol Hill and the work they're doing to protect women. But instead, the host, Tara Palmieri, steered the conversation back to Kamek's tragic encounter with a Florida hospital that was duped into believing the abortion coalition's pervasive lies that treatment for miscarriages and ectopic pregnancies are barred under pro-life laws. Wasn't the first time Kamek shared her story, but as the Congresswoman clarified in a post on X, she did not want that portion of the interview aired because of an ongoing security threat. Well, Palmieri ignored the plea to wax poetic about why pro-life laws are problematic. And this was not the first time the pro-abortion media severely twisted Kamek's words and her tragedy. And likely it is not going to be the last, sadly. Shortly after Kamek initially went public about her ectopic pregnancy in 2025, The Guardian ran an article suggesting Republican representatives' ectopic pregnancy clashes with Florida's abortion laws. News Nation used the newer interview with Palmieri to re-up Kamek's story into a headline claiming, quote, Congresswoman's pregnancy scare tests clarify of Florida abortion law. Now, Kamek, who, by the way, was almost aborted as a baby, wrote her life-threatening pregnancy rupture had never had anything to do with abortion, as the media completely insists. The purpose, she said, of my treatment was not to terminate a viable pregnancy. It was to prevent a rupture that could have killed me. It has never been classified as an abortion, not in Florida, not in any of the 50 states. Not by ACOG, not by major medical associations, not even Planned Parenthood, she wrote. One of the most prevalent myths that these abortion activists and their corporate media allies following the Supreme Court's 2022 Dobbs v. Jackson decision was that the woman would no longer be able to receive life-saving health care in the case of an ectopic pregnancy or a miscarriage. Democrats like Hillary Clinton, AOC, San Francisco Mayor Moron, said, women are going to die. Idiot. These dangerous laws are putting women's health and lives at risk and threatening doctors with jail time, including life in prison for providing the health care they've been trained to provide. That was the Biden's White House statement without any evidence whatsoever. They echoed those lies in emergency rooms, in pop culture, in publications like the New York Times, flooded the front page with all kinds of horror stories about women who sought treatment for miscarriages and other pregnancy complications and were turned away. Some publications even had the balls to claim pro-life laws for the harms and the deaths directly linked to mifepristone, the abortion drug. It didn't pop up out of nowhere, folks. It was a deliberate deception over the definition of abortion, planted by the same people who are accusing pro-lifers of harming women. Induced abortion, the deliberate intention to end the life of a baby, is abortion that is most commonly referenced in culture and in law. Medical settings, the term abortion, much broader, covers an array of conditions that ultimately describe the end of a baby's life in the womb. Therein lies the problem. Hospitals and doctors code miscarriages that occur before 20 weeks of pregnancy as spontaneous abortions. Even the increasing pro-abortion, pro-association American College of Obstetricians and Gynecologists, even they acknowledge that the terms of miscarriage, spontaneous abortions, and early pregnancy loss are basically used interchangeably. Ectopic pregnancies, which is when a fertilized egg implants itself outside of the uterus, very often requires surgical removal from the fallopian tube in a procedure called tubal abortion. See, even that name, it is not an abortion. These pregnancies might manifest as legit because they can yield enough human chorionic gonadotropin, which would trigger a positive pregnancy test. But they've never proved viable beyond 14 weeks gestation. As of last year, ectopic pregnancies is the leading cause of first trimester death. Contrary to Democrats and abortion activists and the media's claims, every pro-life law on every book permits medical professionals to treat ectopic pregnancies, miscarriages, or any other potentially fatal complications. Some states, like Texas, have also passed additional legislation designed to counteract the false "women will die" narrative, which the abortion activists love to shout and spit out there. Those groups and those advertisements, they endanger women, and now a lot of those same groups are using these kind of stories to push the exact same lie. Kamek has already been informed, even if these exceptions didn't exist, that her baby has passed away, her treatment even less of an abortion question than it already was, because treating a spontaneous end to a pregnancy does not meet the legal definition of abortion. Not like deliberately instigating the end of a pregnancy electively. Not the way that does. They need you to believe that a miscarriage, an ectopic pregnancy, or a stillbirth belongs in the same conversation as elective abortions of healthy babies and healthy mamas. Their entire agenda depends on it. And Kamek would know because she lived to tell the tale. Danny, welcome in. Good morning. She said, I made a live one, getting the pool ready for the 5-day heat wave. Finally have time to watch live. Great. Good to have you along. She says, yes, I had an ectopic pregnancy. It ruptured. I was immediately thrown into emergency surgery, and I no longer have my right tube. Definitely not an abortion. Exactly. Those are life-threatening. Wow. Wow, wow, wow. We are very happy both that you are still here and that you're around to share those kind of stories. That is frightening. All right. What do we got here? Oh, can't give up on the reflecting pool. Nope, can't do it. The vandals have been busted, and now they are facing charges. Gotta love it. Saturday, this past weekend, Doug Burgum, Secretary of the Interior spoke out and denounced the vandals who damaged the newly restored reflecting pool and committed other acts of destruction in and around the grounds at the Lincoln Memorial. The reflecting pool, by the way, is officially a part of the Lincoln Memorial. And he vowed the perpetrators are going to face the full force of the law. Now, as of the writing here in this article, the arrests in the case, up to 7. Vowed full prosecution for vandals who allegedly slashed a 350-foot gash in the Lincoln Memorial reflecting pool, defaced the area with a slew of anti-Trump graffiti. Burgum said, "When people are attacking the reflecting pool, it is like an attack on our country. These are most sacred monuments, and they, the perpetrators, are going to be prosecuted to the full extent of the law. Go get 'em, Tiger." Hard to fathom the mindset of someone who would lash out in this kind of wanton destruction. I mean, what is going through their mind? Just because of the president who was in office when the property got restored. At what level of Trump derangement do you have to be? It wasn't just hooliganism either. These vandals did some very serious damage. Roughly 350 feet along the pool's industrial rubber liner, cut with a box cutter. Images showing some of the anti-Trump markings they left behind, including 8647, thank you, Comey, interpreted as a call to violence or to remove the president. When people use box cutters to do vandalism on this thing, it is the same as if they were throwing paint on the Lincoln statue in the memorial building. Same thing in the eyes of the law. And morally, too. And worse than that, if they were caught throwing paint in the faces of everyday tax-paying citizens like you and I. It isn't free speech. It's not political expression. It is more even the run-of-the-mill vandalism. This is willful destruction of public property. What's more, it's just undergone a major and badly needed renovation. Preparation for the celebration of our 250 years, which we will celebrate next Saturday, July 4th. This is an event and these properties that should be the absolute pride of this entire nation, no matter what side of the aisle you sit on. Left to right, Democrats, Republicans, Independents, everyone. These moments in our nation's history should be absolutely non-political. We got here together, fighting, yes, sometimes, but we got here. Clearly, not everybody sees it that way, which is a shame. What to do? Danny, continuing on with the talk about the ectopic pregnancy, and I think this is important because there may be women out there who might need to hear this. She says, if this can help any women, you can bleed like a period and it will stop. Mine came back 2 weeks later and stopped both intense cramps, and my doctor said my cycle had just come twice. It was the third time that it was so painful. I went to the ER. I'd been internally bleeding the entire time. So, ladies, do not wait. Get to the ER. She says it ruptured and I did not know it. And no, I no longer have that doctor. Wow. Thank you so much, Danny, for your honesty and for sharing that. And hopefully Hopefully, it does not happen to any of our women audience. If it does, there's some information that might help you out. All right. Are you ready? Time for the big sip. Oh, yeah. You just knew this was coming, didn't you? Look at that. Blackout Coffee's 4th of July sale, 17.76 off site wide, celebrating 250 years of American freedom. Wow. Roasted in America, fast and reliably delivered right to your door, and fueled by strength. High quality coffee for those high performance days. Right there, Blackout Coffee, their 4th of July sale going on right now. Use the link in our show notes that's down in our description down below. Use that link. Get over to Blackout Coffee. Order, even if you want just a single bag of any one of their roasts, pick your favorite. And then use the code J20, JAY20. That will get you 20% off your first order. Look at that. What's hot at Blackout? Morning Reaper, Brutal Awakening. Look at that. 1776 dark roast. And now you see where it says choose options? That's because you can pick to have whole beans roasted or ground. Right there. See that? Ground, whole bean. There's your options. Same price. They don't charge you extra for grinding your beans. This is one of the best ideas on the planet, the Coffee Club. As low as $14.50 a bag, bigger boxes, better pricing. Coffee Club actually pays you back. You get a $10 reward on your third order. Never run out of coffee again. You will have it automatically delivered, exclusive member pricing and rewards. You can cancel anytime. You can change what roast you want anytime. They've got coffee pods. They've got all kinds of flavored coffees, instant, cold brew. It's all there. Pause at any time, even if you want. You don't have to cancel. You can pause for a while if you need for some reason or another. But man, I'm telling you, this coffee is just the best on the planet. John Santos and the gang over there do a phenomenal job of creating this amazing coffee. Always full flavored, never ever bitter. And we live on it around here. Blackout Coffee. The link is in our description. Just pull that down below. Use that link. Save yourself some money. And they're fantastic. July 4th sale is going on right now. All right. You know, the part of the 250th celebration is the amazing Great American State Fair. Well, true to form, here we freaking go again. There are 10 states that are going to boycott the Great American State Fair. Pennsylvania senators and some companies have stepped in and are helping to fill the gap, which is fantastic news. Despite the Trump derangement-riddled naysayers and detractors who just cannot seem to bring themselves to celebrate our great country because of who happens to be the president at the moment. White House press email said the nation's 250th birthday countdown is underway. President Trump making sure it matches the moment. The Great American State Fair kicked off on the National Mall, and Trump announced he'll personally headline the Mount Rushmore fireworks celebration on July 3rd. First time the fireworks have lit up the Black Hills since 2020. And folks, if you've never seen in the past that Black Hills Mount Rushmore fireworks display, it is the most patriotic thing. It will give you chills. It will make you cry. It is just absolutely phenomenal. And this year, 250th anniversary, I'm sure it's going to be 10 times better. However, as we all out here are celebrating our patriotism, 10 states have declined to represent the nation with their displays. Sadly, the first one on the list is my now absolutely back-ass word ridiculous home state of Connecticut. Not that I should be surprised, because Connecticut has put a bunch of idiots in Congress and continues to re-elect them. But yes, Connecticut is right there. In fact, to the point now where I'm almost thinking I should probably pick Hoboken, New Jersey as my hometown and forget Connecticut, because frankly, it's a little embarrassing to say I'm from there. In addition to Connecticut, Illinois, Maine, Massachusetts, noticing a trend, North Carolina, Oregon, Rhode Island, Vermont, and Washington. Now, hold on there just 1 minute. Let me just check. Connecticut, Maine, Massachusetts, Rhode Island, Vermont. 5 out of the 6, you know what's missing? New Hampshire. New Hampshire is not on this list. Otherwise, every single freaking one of the New England states boycotting. Four of this list, part of the original 13 colonies. Oh, yeah. What the hell? Selena Zito, who's an independent journalist, native Pennsylvanian, expressed her outrage, as did a bunch of other Pennsylvanians. You're an original colony, birthplace of the Constitution. How do you not make it a point to be a part of America's 250th anniversary? Can you explain that to me? Governor Josh Shapiro expects to run for president in 2028. Yeah, good freaking luck with that, you moron. You would think he would have risen above all the petty politic bullshit in order to take advantage of an opportunity to actually polish his national bona fides, but no, apparently not. Thank God the great state of Pennsylvania has got some great senators who believe in bipartisan cooperation. Senators Dave McCormick and John Fetterman have both said, how do we make this happen? And within hours, they worked together. One is a Republican, one is a Democrat. Worked together with business leaders to pull off not just the state display, but also representatives to man the area. These two senators, fantastic, perfect examples of what Congress should be representing. Getting things done for the good of the American people when it matters, and it matters. Pennsylvania's two senators, one a Republican again and one a Democrat, say they will have a presence at the Great American State Fair in Washington days after Shapiro said President Trump had made the event too partisan. Fetterman's response, this is great. I love this guy. Celebrating America's 250th birthday and Pennsylvania's special role in our country is important, and it is bipartisan. We discovered our Commonwealth was not participating in the Great American State Fair and the National Mall, and we should be. Fetterman said, we are now making sure every Pennsylvania's booth will be highlighting the Commonwealth's agricultural dominance, our businesses, and what makes Pennsylvania a truly awesome and historic place. Wow. Fantastic. That there are people who can put aside the bullshit and just be honest, work together, and make this happen, which is brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. While we talk about Americana, found this rather interesting article, and it's titled The Lincoln Speech Every American Should Read Before Next Saturday, 4th of July, our 250th. In the lead up, been a lot of renewed focus on our founding fathers, which is to be expected. We kind of re-educate ourselves on what this nation was and how it came to be. Somehow, as they declared, then battled for and won independence. Well, they had the wisdom and the foresight to design and build an absolutely remarkable foundation, one that has not only endured for a quarter of a millennium, but has grown, has thrived in a way that I don't think any of them could have possibly imagined that we would be where we are today. Not without our struggles, to be absolutely sure about that. America is still a toddler in some respects, maybe an adolescent at best. It's had its fair share of growing pains, descending into civil war less than a century after we were founded. He was not, of course, a founding father, but Abraham Lincoln's role in guiding this country through some of the most fraught years and out the other side of the hell that was the Civil War, it puts him shoulder to shoulder, I think, with the founding fathers of this country. It seems very fitting to honor him as we honor them. I don't really recall a time when I didn't have at least some understanding of the significance of Lincoln's presidency. The fact that his tomb, his home, other Lincoln sites are located in Illinois makes for Illinois folks quite accessible. You can visit the tomb and museum and the home where he and Mary Todd lived. Lincoln himself appeared before the Illinois Court of Appeals in Mount Vernon 155 years ago, before the Illinois Supreme Court. He was housed there at the time. The court was housed in that building at the time. Successfully argued a major tax case on behalf of the Illinois Central Railroad. But for all of anybody's familiarity with Abraham Lincoln, you have to look closely, very closely, at his second inaugural address. Closing paragraph begins with the very familiar "with malice towards none and charity for all." The paragraphs preceding it going to be new to a lot of people. A moment in our history when they land differently than I suspect they probably would have even a decade ago, let alone 155 years ago. Here's those words. Fellow countrymen, at this second appearing to take the oath of the presidential office, there is less occasion for an extended address than there was at the first. Then a statement somewhat in detail of a course to be pursued seemed fitting and proper. Now, at the expiration of 4 years during which public declarations have been constantly called forth on every point and phase of the great contest which still absorbs the attention, and engrosses the energies of the nation, little that is new could be presented. The progress of our arms, upon which all else chiefly depends, as well as known to the public as to myself, and it is, I trust, reasonably satisfactory and encouraging to all. With high hope for the future, no prediction in regard to it is so ventured. Wow. That address was delivered March 4th, 1865, just 41 days before Mr. Lincoln would be felled by an assassin's bullet. And despite its brevity, its very short speech, roughly about 700 words, that address somehow managed to wrap its arms around the tragedy of the previous 4 years, and yet at the same time speaks with bountiful hope for the future. What jumps out to me there was this: as is as well known to the public as to myself. Now, this was obviously a long time before social media existed. News in 1865 traveled in a very analog fashion, and yet Lincoln was confident that the American populace was fairly well up to speed with the status of the conflict. Far less access to information back then, that's for damn sure, and yet they were nonetheless well informed. On the occasion corresponding to this 4 years ago, all thoughts were anxiously directed to an impending civil war. All dreaded it, all sought to avert it. While the inaugural address was being delivered from the place devoted altogether to saving the Union without war, insurgent agents were in the city, seeking to destroy it without war, seeking to dissolve the Union and divide effects by negotiation. Both parties deprecated war, but one of them would make war rather than let the nation survive, and the other would accept war rather than let it perish. And the war came. And while Lincoln remained hopeful for the future of this country, he wasn't interested in glossing over how it had been fractured. He didn't shy away from calling out those people whose aim was a house divided. One-eighth of the whole population were colored slaves not distributed generally over the Union, but localized in the southern part of it. This is again Lincoln's speech. These slaves constituted a particular and powerful interest. All knew that this interest was somehow the cause of the war, to strengthen the Union, perpetrate and extend this interest was the object for the insurgents, who would render the Union even by war, while the government claimed no right to do more than to restrict the territorial engagement of it. Neither party expected for the war the magnitude or duration of which was already attained. Neither anticipated that the cause of the conflict might cease with, or even before the conflict itself should cease. Each looked for an easier triumph and a result less fundamental and astounding. Both read the same Bible and prayed to the same God, and each invoked his and against the other. It may seem strange that any men would dare to ask a just God's assistance in wringing their bread from the sweat of other men's faces. But let us judge not, that we not be judged. The prayers of both could not be answered. That of neither has been answered fully. The Almighty has his own purpose. Woe unto the world because of offenses, for it must be needs that be offenses come. But woe to the man by whom the offense cometh, If we shall oppose that American slavery is one of those offenses which in the providence of God must needs come out, but which having continued through his appointed time, he now wills to remove, and that gives to both North and South this terrible war, as the woe due to those by whom the offensive came shall be, we discern therein any departure from those divine authorities which the believers in the living God always ascribe to him. Fondly do we hope, fervently do we pray, that this mighty scourge of war may speedily pass away. Yet, if God wills that it continues until all the wealth piled by the bondsmen 250 years of unrequited toil shall be sunk, and until every drop of blood drawn with the lash shall be paid by another drawn with the sword, as was said 3,000 years ago. Still it must be said that the judgment of the Lord are true and righteous altogether. Whoa. You can hear Lincoln's voice. I know some of the words and the verbiage is a bit odd because, again, this is the mid-1800s. They spoke a little differently than we folks speak today. Lincoln puts it like this: you get hit with exactly how enormous this is. Yet if God wills that it continue until all the wealth piled by the bondsman's 250 years of unrequited toil shall be sunk, and until every drop of blood with the lash shall be paid by another drawn with the sword, as was said 3,000 years ago, so still it must be that the judgments of the Lord are true and righteous altogether. And finally, with malice towards none, with charity for all, with firmness in the right as God gives us to see the right, let us strive on to finish the work we are in, to bind up the nation's wounds, to care for him who shall have borne the battle, and for his widow and his orphan, to do all which may achieve and cherish a just and lasting peace among ourselves and among all nations. Wow. 41 short days later, that man was felled by an assassin's bullet. But again, as we celebrate our 250th, as I said in the beginning, Lincoln was not a founding father, but he certainly ought to be held up there in the place among the Most High. Fantastic. Wow. Danny, who is from Illinois, if I'm not mistaken, says, our school did field trips to Springfield, and you walk through Lincoln's house. It was the coolest thing ever. Highly recommended if you visit Illinois. Everything was preserved and in its place. That is cool. Wow. All right. All right. One last little quick one before we get out of here, because it's getting late. And that is, of course, a doggy video because we love them. But when you watch two souls absolutely heal each other, it is a gift. So Happy Benny, the dog, found his forever home with Walter. And this little bit of video, it's just 15 seconds long, will serve to remind you that when you adopt, you save just more than just just dogs. You are saving hearts. Take a look.
He's a very good boy. I love him.
Oh, look at that. Wow. Look at that. Hugging on just as tight as could be while he's waiting for the adoption papers to go through. Man. Wow. Thank you, my friends. It really means a lot to me that you are here. We appreciate your coming along for the ride. If you're watching on YouTube, please hit that subscribe button. On Rumble, it is follow, the green little oval button down there somewhere. Also, in our description, you will find our PayPal account. You want to help to support the show, making a donation, you can do that. Any amount. It all goes exactly to this show to help keep the lights on, keep everything running around here. We appreciate that. We do this for free for you, Monday through Friday at 9 a.m. Eastern Time, and we hope that you will support the show. Head over to one of our sponsors, Patriot Mobile, Blackout Coffee, make a purchase, and again, another great way to help out what we do around here. We'll see you again tomorrow for the Tuesday edition. Have a great day.